The 1960s represented a perfect storm of design and performance. It was a decade where engines got bigger, lines got sleeker, and the win on Sunday, sell on Monday mentality dominated Detroit and Europe alike. But as the fuel crisis of the 70s hit and lifestyles changed, many of these high-performance machines were tucked away in barns, sheds, and garages, intended to be fixed someday. For some, that day never came until decades later. Take, for instance, the legendary 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona was one of the most recognizable silhouettes in racing history. Only 503 were ever built to satisfy the NASCAR requirements. Today, they're very rare to find, and not long ago, one was discovered in a rural Alabama barn, covered in decades of dust and bird droppings, and despite the moss growing on the vinyl roof and the flat tires, beneath the grime sat a numbers-matching 440 Magnum engine. It had been parked since 1974, when the owner decided it was simply too loud and too fast for his daily chores. Finding a Daytona in the wild is like finding a dinosaur bone in your backyard. It's a piece of history that shouldn't exist, yet there it still stands. But the 60s weren't just about American muscle. Across the Atlantic, the 1960s gave us the Jaguar E-Type, a car Enzo Ferrari famously called the most beautiful ever made. The particularly rare 1961 flat-floor Series 1 E-Type was recently discovered in a hedge-lined garage in England. It hadn't moved since the late 60s. The leather was cracked, and the British racing green paint had faded to a dull matte, but the soul of the car was intact. For collectors, the patina, the natural wear and tear of time, is often more valuable than a shiny new restoration because it tells a story of a life lived. Of course, we cannot discuss the 60s without the Shelby Cobra. In a small garage in North Carolina, a 1967 Shelby 427 Cobra sat undisturbed for 27 years. The owner had passed away, and the car remained on jack stands, surrounded by old boxes and Christmas decoration. When the door finally opened, the smell of old fuel and stagnant air filled the room, but the sight of that aluminum body was enough to take any enthusiast's breath away. These cars were built for the track, yet here was one of the most powerful vehicles of its era, hiding in plain sight. The allure of the barn find isn't just about the monetary value, though these cars can fetch hundreds of thousands, if not millions, at auction. It's about the connection to the past. When you sit in a 1965 Mustang Fastback that hasn't been touched in 40 years, you're touching the same steering wheel and smelling the same interior that the original driver did during the summer of love. You are the one chosen to wake the beast. As these rare 1960s gems continue to be unearthed, they remind us that while metal may rust and tires may rot, the spirit of the 1960s is still out there, waiting in the dark for someone to turn the key once again.